Hello, I'm Lyman Grant, and I'm the teacher of this class of Humanities 1302. Welcome to the semester. This will be the summer semester of 2018. And just tell you just very briefly about myself. I have been a teacher at ACC for since 1978, actually, so a pretty long time. And I've been teaching humanities classes since the 90s, and then also starting around 2012 or so, something like that. I also teach creative writing, and I've taught English here at the college. I want to welcome you to this class. What the focus of this class is, are the Western humanities, which would be Europe and that general region, plus the United States. And we're going to be looking at the kind of the historical movements and the politics and the art and the music and the literature and philosophy for those for the time period 1500 to the present. Or we're going to actually dip into the earlier than that just a little bit, just to get ourselves oriented. Um, we're going to be using a couple of books in the class. This semester I've decided not to use a fairly expensive $100, $200 book with lots of art in it and things like that. But it's a big book and it costs a lot of money. So what I'm going to be using is this book here, the art book, which is fairly cheap. You can get it used, I'm sure, in a lot of places, but you can also order it from Amazon. I don't know this what the current book looks like. This is one I've had for some time, so there may be a slightly different cover. If the book turns out to be very different, please let me know, but I don't think it will. And all it is a 500 pictures with very brief discussions of them. So we have the whole history of Western art here. You will not need to know all the pieces in here. There will be a list for each unit that we do that tells you what works that you'll be responsible for. The other book that we'll be using this is a hardbound version of it, Jacques Barzun's book From Dawn to Decadence, 1500 to the present, 500 years of Western culture. There you can see his name, Jacques Barzun. And it's a fairly thick book, and in another presentation, I'm going to talk about how to tackle that book. You're not going to really be responsible for all the words and all the art in these two books. We're going to narrow things down, although I will ask you to read as much of the Barzun book as you can. Please, as you get started, please look at the syllabus and look at the how to be a successful student in this class. It will give you some guidelines, and obviously the syllabus is very important in telling you what tests and essays and things like that that we have. There is also a schedule posted for the class, and please look at that. It will be, I'll amend it a little bit. I have about the first 3 weeks pretty tied down, but I'm going to be adding some things and fleshing some things out for the final 2 weeks of the class. Okay. I do need to warn you that this is a fairly fast-paced class. I don't know that it will be considered one of the easiest classes that you have. I hope you have a lot of time. The way we teachers think about these things is that you have 2 classes. The full load for a summer 5.5-week class, the full load for that is 2 classes. That means that's 40 hours a week, just as 15 hours of taking a class in a regular semester is a full load or 40 hours a week. I know a lot of you work, so I hope you aren't taking 2 of these 5.5-week classes in addition to working and having a family and all of that. So please consider your time in how you have. I'm assuming that you're going to be putting in 15 to 20 hours a week per week into this class. If you were taking it face to face, you would be in class 8 hours a week. So at the very least, you should be doing 8 hours of classwork. but I expect that you'll have to do more than that. So please, if you, I have taken online classes myself, and what I tended to do was have to, clear my schedule on the weekend at least one day where basically I worked all day on the class. I hope you can do that, or at least schedule yourself a lot of time. We don't want you getting ill. We don't want you losing a lot of sleep. I do want you to succeed in the class. I promise you that. Uh, any person who has to drop out is really a failure on my part. So, uh, but please consider how much time you have and be ready to devote a good amount of time. It is a lot of reading because you're not going to be getting lectures from me as you would in class. We'll substitute a lot of reading for that sort of thing. I want to point out also that the first 2 weeks of class I'm going to have is fairly, I think, evenly paced. The next 2 weeks will be pretty difficult, and you'll have a lot of you'll have to pay attention and do a lot of work there. I think those are the two hardest weeks that we have, and then we'll have a fairly easy last week of the class. I won't say easy, but there's not as much reading going into that last section. My basic philosophy, if you read the how to be a successful student, my philosophy is that we need to know facts. We're going to move from facts to analysis to synthesis, and and the assignments are created to reflect that. We'll have objective tests to know which painter did which painting, to look at a painting and be able to identify the painter or the name of it. There'll be names of works that you'll need to know. There'll be pieces of music that you should be able to recognize, and then give the title and the composer of it. And there'll be some terminology that we'll need to take care of along the way. All of this will be presented. At the end of each unit, you'll have a list of everything that factual knowledge that you should know, including important quotes from the various essays and poems and such that we'll be reading. Um, One of the books that I recommend, or the ideas that you become familiar with, it's not required for this class, but I'm kind of assuming that you'll approach this class in this way. It's a book by a man named Mortimer Adler, like Jacques Barzun. He's a older gentleman, no longer living, lived a long time, was basically part of the modernist movement in America. And this is a book, if you don't have this book, you can probably find it online. It's, again, not required. And I'm just pointing out to you to show you where I get this certain idea I'm about to speak about, and is in the handout on the introduction to the class. I don't expect you to read every word in the Barzun book. It's about 800 pages. It's a lot of reading, and it's fairly thick. It'll be a book that's different from many of the books that you've read. It's not a textbook. It's a book written by a human being with some ideas in his head, and not necessarily to teach people. And I think this is a great thing for this class, actually, in that you'll get to see the way a real person who has studied this subject of Western history and how he thinks about it, and rather than just treating you you know like a class of empty heads that we need to pour facts into. Uh, and so, how should you read the book? First of all, just kind of look at you inspect it. Once we're assuming that you know how to read, you know a word and you can recognize it, but look at the book and how it's structured. Know what you're going to be responsible for each unit in the class. Kind of scan through it. Look at the headers. Look at the subheadings and things like that. You inspect the book. And then even become it's going to be very important for you this semester, become very familiar with the indices of this book. It has 2 indexes, and so you're going to be using it an awful lot. And then you're going to read certain sections that you will choose to read in an analytical way. And what you're going to be looking at is what's the writer trying to say in this section of the book as a whole. What's he saying? What are the details that he's presenting to you, and how do those details add up? And then at a certain point, you're going to be asking yourself, is it true? Okay, unlike a textbook, which we assume, oh, they're giving us the truth, and there's no opinion in it. But there will be opinions in this book, and you need to think about those and whether you agree of it. And then at the very end, and we'll do this at the end of the semester, you will be looking at what is, what of this book. Did it mean anything to you? Is it telling you the truth? Are there parts of it that you think are the truth, and there are parts of it that you think aren't the truth? And then the final type of reading is what Adler calls the syntoptical reading. I'm going to call it synthesis reading. And that's where you're comparing different sources. So we have a lot of videos that are going to be available to you to look at. There are going to be readings for you to look at. You can look at all the Wikipedia and all the other things you want to look at on your own. And we're asking you then to think about it and put it together. You're not going to be tested on whether you agree with Barzan in his view of history and of Western civilization. You're not going to be tested or graded on whether you agree with me. What we want you to do is think about it and to come to your own conclusion. And so in syntoptical reading or in synthesis reading, you're taking different sources and you're weighing them against each other. You're looking at, are they defining the terms in the same way? Are they interpreting facts in the same way? And this is what I hope as a freshman or sophomore at Austin Community College, you're on your way to thinking about these things and putting life together that way. You will also, I've also included some links where you can read more or see more about what this type of reading is. But again, you're not going to be reading, from page 1 to page 800, word for word all the way through. I hope you look at it and decide, you look at different sections and which parts do you want to know more about and which support the ideas that are being covered in class. I've already said some of my points here at the end of my little handout that again is available. Is that Barzan is writing a book. He's written a synthesis book. He's written this book, as we'll talk about in another video, at the end of his life. After years and years, 60 years of study, he wrote this book. So it is put together in a syntoptical way, in a synthesis. So he kind of roams around. He's not just going to tell you, Leonardo da Vinci was born such and such and that his famous paintings were. He's going to assume you can piece all that together on your own. And I think the final thing that I would say really is that I hope you take the class seriously. I hope you don't. I hope you have a lot of time to explore and wander around in these books, find things that you love. That's the most important thing about this class, is that you find some works, find some ideas, find some writers and philosophers who had ideas that you can find interesting and can sustain you, and that you want to pursue in other realms of your life. If you're an economist, there's going to be, Adam Smith will show up and Marx will show up. If you're a scientist, Newton and Galileo are going to show up. If you're a poet, T.S. Eliot's going to show up, or Walt Whitman. There's going to be really something for everybody in this class, and I hope you latch on to that, search for it, and enjoy it. Thank you very much.